The sound that haunts me isn't the hum of the monitors. It's the laughter echoing through my phone, effortless, victorious. The kind that celebrates someone else's loss. I'm standing in ICU room 609 of St. Augustine Medical Center in downtown San Francisco, watching my daughter breathe through a machine. It's Tuesday, 3:12 p.m. The air smells of antiseptic and quiet despair. Emily lies motionless, a dozen tubes tethering her to life. Her skin is almost translucent against the sheets. Machines do the work her body can't. The ventilator pushes air. The dialysis unit hums like an anxious prayer, filtering poison drop by drop. 29 years old. A history teacher. 3 months pregnant. And dying. My phone buzzes again. Instagram notification. Ryan Cooper, news story. For a heartbeat, I hope it's something about her recovery. Instead, sunlight floods the screen. Ryan on a Monaco balcony, tucks open, champagne in hand, a woman with bleached hair pressed to his side. The caption reads, "Another day, another win. Life's a gamble, play big." He laughs. That sound. Effortless, triumphant. The timestamp, 12:07 p.m. Monaco time, 6 hours ago. While Emily was vomiting blood, her husband was celebrating. The laugh fills the sterile room, small speaker hissing. I stare at my daughter's still form, hearing that victorious noise. That's when clarity cuts through grief. For 40 years, I've built Hale International hotels from a single seaside and into a $4 billion empire. I've dealt with charming predators in tailored suits. I know the difference between negligence and design. That laugh belongs to a man who believes he's already won. The nurse glances up from her chart. "Mr. Hale? Any word from your son-in-law?" "He's handling business in Europe." "Business," she repeats softly, as if that word could excuse his absence. When she leaves, I touch Emily's wrist, cool, fragile. "Don't worry, sweetheart. I'll handle the business from here." My voice breaks on handle. First time it's done that in years. 3 days earlier, before the monitors and the silence, I was in Los Angeles closing a boutique hotel acquisition near Santa Barbara. My office looked out over the Pacific. Profit forecasts filled my desk. Then my assistant mentioned an unread message from Emily. "Dad, been tired lately. Think it's morning sickness. Ryan says I'm overreacting. Talk soon." Morning sickness. That was 9 days ago. Since then, only Ryan's texts. "She's resting. Doctor says nothing serious. She doesn't want visitors." It didn't sound like her. Emily was the kind who texted good morning even when she was late. By Monday night, the silence itched behind my ribs. I called my pilot. Wheels up at 6. The flight from LA to San Francisco Airport took 57 minutes. I stared through the clouds and thought about unanswered calls. I didn't go home. I drove straight to Emily's townhouse in Pacific Heights. The moment I opened the door, the air felt wrong. Chemical, scrubbed. Lemon cleaner masking something bitter, like burnt plastic. The kitchen gleamed unnaturally. Even the dish rack looked staged. Emily. No answer. Her phone lay on the counter, cracked screen, the last outgoing call, to me. She was on the bathroom floor, collapsed, barely breathing. Paramedics said renal distress. The ER said possible toxin. By morning, critical. Ryan texted hours later. Had to fly out last minute. Corporate summit. Tell her I love her. Love. The word curdled in my mouth. "Mr. Hale." Dr. Maya Ortiz, lead intensivist, stands beside me now. Her tone is professional, but the sympathy is practiced. Emily's condition is severe. The dialysis is keeping her stable, but her kidneys are nearly non-functional. The tests point to ethylene glycol, antifreeze. She pauses on the last word. "That doesn't just happen by accident," I say. "No," she replies quietly. "It doesn't. Small doses over weeks could mimic flu symptoms, fatigue, nausea, confusion, until the organs collapse." Weeks. Ryan had been the one making her morning smoothies lately, always insisting on taking care of her diet. Dr. Ortiz adds, "We'll know more once the extended panels return, but we should prepare for all possibilities." All possibilities, I echo. She leaves. I open my phone again. The Monaco clip has a sequel. Ryan at a blackjack table, chips stacked high, the same woman kissing his cheek. He grins. "Told you. I never lose." By 6 p.m., my security chief, Thomas Liu, meets me in the hospital lounge. 20 years at my side, ex-Interpol, calm as a scalpel. "I need everything on Ryan Cooper," I tell him. "Financials, travel, communications, insurance. Start tonight. Quietly. He nods once. Understood. When he's gone, I sit beside Emily again. The ventilator hisses. I remember her wedding. Sunset at our Napa vineyard. Ryan's vows about partnership and forever. He kissed her hands when he said forever. Now those hands lie limp beneath 4 lines. Your old man still knows how to hunt, I whisper. 2 a.m. Phone vibration. Message from Thomas. Found something. Need to meet. Urgent. We meet in the parking garage shadows. He hands me a folder. Inside, bank statements, screenshots, travel logs. Ryan's gambling accounts show $212,000 in debt. Offshore transfers. Online casinos. And 6 months ago, he purchased a $1.5 million life insurance policy on Emily. Beneficiary, Ryan Cooper. Premiums withdrawn automatically from their joint account, one she rarely touched. My hands stay steady by force. Thomas exhales. There's more. He's booked 2 one-way business class tickets from Nice to Panama for next week. He hesitates. He's not traveling alone. Silence stretches. A woman named Sophie Levine. The blonde from the video. I walk back into the hospital through halls that smell of disinfectant and loss. Machines hum behind every door. Emily's monitor beats its steady rhythm. If I'm right, and I usually am, Ryan started poisoning her after learning about the pregnancy. The payout plus a debt-free life with his mistress. Neat math for a man who thinks luck is strategy. He forgot one rule. Luck bends when money meets willpower. And I have more of both than he'll ever touch. Dawn spills over the bay, gilding the glass facade of the hospital. I make 3 calls. First, to Ray Moreno, a private investigator who's cleaned up my competitors' messes for years. Second, to Ellen Cho, my general counsel. Third, to Dr. Ortiz. By noon, a plan is forming, legal, surgical, absolute. Before it begins, I return to my daughter's bedside. I tell her about the sunrise she can't see, about the gulls circling the pier, about how the city smells of salt and coffee. Then I promise, the man who did this will never touch freedom again. I won't just stop him, Emily. I'll erase him, legally, cleanly, permanently. Somewhere across the world, in a Monaco penthouse, Ryan Cooper laughs again, unaware that his winning streak just ended. The next morning, the sky over San Francisco looks rinsed clean, pale and glassy after a night of rain. From the ICU window, the city seems peaceful, pretending it doesn't know what's happening in this room. Emily's monitors blink in slow rhythm. I pull a chair beside her bed. Morning, sweetheart. You always love the air after rain. Nothing answers but the hiss of oxygen. I have to step out for a few hours, I tell her. We're going to find out exactly what he did. You just rest. My voice wavers once. I pretend it's the air conditioning. Then I straighten, touch the edge of the blanket, and walk out. The promise solidifies by the time the elevator doors close. By the time I leave the wharf, fog has rolled back in. San Francisco pretending to forget what it knows. The smell of salt and varnished wood clings to my jacket. Ray Moreno is already waiting in my office. Same cracked leather jacket, same quiet eyes. I slide a folder across the desk. Ryan Cooper's photo, a copy of the Monaco Post, a short summary. I want everything. I say. Money, travel, messages, the works. He flips the photo once, studies the back. Any legal lines I should avoid? Cross what you have to, just don't leave footprints. He nods. You got it. I lean back. Start with money. Men who pull this kind of trick always think in numbers. He gives a half smile. Figures. Then he's gone. The foghorn out on the bay sounds once, long and low. I take it as the beginning of the hunt. By noon I'm back at St. Augustine. The corridor squeaks beneath my shoes, each step echoing in disinfected air. Dr. Maya Ortiz meets me outside Emily's room, tablet pressed to her chest. The extended panels confirmed it, she says. Ethylene glycol, antifreeze. She pauses, as if saying the word might change the meaning. Repeated doses over at least 8 weeks. Intentional. You're sure? Yes. And no one else knows. Officially, it's listed as toxin under investigation. Keep it that way. She studies me. You don't look surprised. I run hotels, doctor. We learn early that poison rarely announces itself. Her eyes search mine. You'll want the reports. I need them. That's irregular. So is attempting to murder a pregnant woman. After a breath, she slides the tablet toward me. I'll print copies under an anonymous code. You didn't get them from me. Understood. She hesitates. You're not angry, are you? I'm not angry. I'm organized. When I step outside again, daylight has thinned to copper. The city smells of rain and diesel. In my car, I call Ellen Cho, my general counsel. She answers before the second ring. What do you need, Richard? Quiet containment. We're building a case before it goes to the police. You mean surveillance? I mean evidence collection. You've always redefined supervision. I prefer results to semantics. She exhales into the phone. Fine. I'll prepare NDAs and confidentiality clauses. You're walking a narrow line. I built my fortune on narrow lines. By dusk, I'm at Emily's townhouse. The fog has settled low, wrapping the street lamps in halos. My security techs, borrowed from the hotel's risk division, wait in a van down the block. Same layout as before, one asks. Yes. Cameras in the kitchen and garage. Audio if possible. Motion triggers only. They work fast, ghosts in blue overalls. When they finish, the house looks untouched. I make a slow circuit through the kitchen. The blender gleams beside a half-empty container of protein powder. I twist the lid, sniff. Sweet vanilla, nothing obvious. I drop it into a plastic bag and seal it. Evidence has a way of disappearing once police arrive. I prefer redundancy. 2 samples, 2 drives, 2 copies. How you stay rich and how you stay right. When I leave, the fog has thickened enough that the city lights look like bruises under skin. Just after midnight, Ray calls. Ryan's bleeding cash, he says. How deep? Outside, rain needles the windows. Morning drags itself over the city in streaks of dull gold. I haven't slept. The coffee in the hospital cafeteria tastes like burnt paper, but it keeps the world focused. Thomas Liu joins me at the corner table. He looks like he hasn't slept either. Ray checked in. I ask. He's on his way to the storage unit now, Thomas says. I've got a contact at the rental company. She'll stall if Ryan shows up. Good. I slide a flash drive across the table. Backup copy of the hospital toxicology reports. Keep it off the grid. He pockets it without a word. That's what I like about him. Silence is loyalty. Outside, rain needles the windows. When I head back upstairs, the corridor smells of fresh disinfectant and overripe flowers. Dr. Ortiz intercepts me. We managed to stabilize her creatinine levels overnight, she says. It's minimal, but it's something. How long can the dialysis keep her stable? Indefinitely, if infection doesn't set in. But Mr. Hale, she's fighting. I nod. That's all she needs to do. The elevator doors close around me before my composure can slip. By late afternoon, I'm in a different kind of hospital, one of money. The private bank downtown hums with quiet efficiency. I meet my account manager, who owes me several favors, in the vault conference room. I need access to the trust records Emily and Ryan signed last year. I tell him. Copy everything. Discreetly. He hesitates. That agreement's sealed. Then consider this a donation to your children's college fund. I interrupt, sliding a small envelope across the table. He swallows once. Understood. The envelope isn't cash. It's a note promising priority placement in our next hotel franchise. People rarely realize that favors buy more loyalty than bills. By the time I step outside, the city's turning that copper color again, the one that makes everything look like memory. Ray calls just as the streetlights blink on. Got inside the storage unit, he says. Nothing flashy, just a safe, travel bags, a few documents. What kind of documents? Insurance duplicates. Bank statements. A folder labeled prenatal records, private. Looks like he took copies of everything. Any signs he's planning to disappear soon? Flight tracker shows he's booked out of Nice on the 12th. Panama City. Same woman. Keep eyes on both, I say. If he sells assets, I want timestamps. Ray pauses. You going to the police with this? Not yet. Evidence is like wine. It needs to breathe. He laughs quietly. You always did have your own recipes. At home, the penthouse feels too large. The city spreads below like a motherboard, tiny lights, invisible currents. I pour a glass of water and sit in the dark, reviewing everything on my tablet. The insurance file, the toxicology scan, Ray's notes. Every document, another filter clearing the toxin from her life. Patterns form, numbers, dates, movements, like a constellation whose name I already know. A text pings from Ellen Cho, paperwork ready. Also, client privilege will only cover so much. Be careful. I type back. Privilege is a relative term. Then I switch to the hospital feed on my secure network. The cameras in Emily's kitchen show nothing but stillness. Countertops waiting for proof to reveal itself. Every frame is a statement of what he took for granted. The ventilator exhales in time with my breath. For now, that's enough. Purpose sharpens. The hunt begins. The city wakes slow, as if it senses eyes it can't locate. From the hospital's upper windows, the bay looks dull steel, ships crawling through fog. I stand there a moment, coffee cooling in my hand, the bitterness steadying me. Emily's monitors flash their code of endurance behind me. Steady, contained, mechanical. She's breathing because a system says she can. Some nights, I envy the simplicity. Systems are what I trust. By 8, I'm back in my office at the wharf. The building smells faintly of varnished wood and sea salt, a clean contrast to the hospital's disinfectant haze. The foghorn moans once, low and distant, punctuation for a plan already forming. Ray and Ellen arrive within minutes of each other. I keep the blinds half closed so the light cuts through like interrogation stripes. Ellen sets down her briefcase. You called this a coordination meeting. Meaning this moves today, I tell her. We have motive, opportunity, and proof. Now we control the timing. Ray leans against the window, arms folded. He's still in Monaco. Checked out of the Hotel de Vienne this morning. Casino logs show he cashed chips for 260 grand. So he's still playing? I say. Good. Players are predictable. Ellen slides a folder toward me. Insurance timeline. If Emily dies within the 30-day clause, he collects the full amount immediately. Past that, payout delays pending investigation. So he needs her gone now. She nods. And he can't risk an autopsy proving poison. Then we make him think she's fading fast. I say. But we don't touch her chart. We use perception. Ray arches an eyebrow. How do you fake perception? Information leaks. I answer. Controlled ones. I turn to Ellen. Draft a letter from the insurance carrier, routine claim review. Needs his personal signature and ID verification. Make it look bureaucratic, urgent, but harmless. Send it to his email and to his Monaco hotel by courier. Ray smirks. Bait on the hook. Exactly. He'll think it's paperwork to secure his payout before she's gone. Ellen nods, already typing. What's the timeline? Today? The carrier's European branch timestamp will sell the illusion. She pauses, fingers still. When he comes back, Richard, what then? Then he learns what due diligence feels like. I call Thomas next. We'll need full coordination once he's on U.S. soil. I say. Customs notifications, travel manifests, everything. I can't access customs directly, he says. But I have someone at TSA who owes me. Use him. I end the call, slide my phone face down. The act feels final, ritualistic. By mid-afternoon, I'm across town in a glass-walled cafe near the financial district, meeting an old acquaintance from the insurance board, a man named Prescott, built entirely of tan suits and practiced charm. He greets me with the soft smile of someone who knows precisely how expensive his time is. Richard, it's been years. Long enough for your hair to go honest. I say. He chuckles. What brings you into my jurisdiction? Verification, I reply. If an international claim surfaces involving one of my property's dependents, I'd like early notice. He stirs his espresso. That's vague. So is discretion, I counter. He studies me, then nods once. You'll get an alert before any payout request crosses the wire. Appreciate it. Should I ask why? Probably not. When I step back onto the street, the wind smells like copper and salt. A siren blurs through the fogged glass as I cross Market Street, its echo fading into the bay. The sky's gone a darker gray, the kind that hides every color at once. At 5, Ellen calls. Letters drafted, courier arranged, digital copy scheduled for 10 a.m. Monaco time tomorrow. He'll believe it. Good, I say. Now make it real enough to stand in court later. File a legitimate inquiry through the U.S. carrier, an internal audit request. If anyone checks, it exists. You're walking a razor edge, she warns. I know which side of it pays. Back at the hospital, Dr. Ortiz catches me outside Emily's room. Her expression is steady, but there's new weariness under it. The baby's stable, she says quietly. The toxin accumulation hasn't crossed the placental barrier as much as we feared. That changes nothing. I didn't say it should. I just thought you'd want to know. I nod once. Thank you for keeping everything sealed. I'm trusting you when I shouldn't, she says. That makes two of us. She turns back toward the ICU, leaving me with the rhythm of machines and the faint hiss of ventilators through the glass. For a second, the sound matches the ocean in my ears, and I let it anchor me before moving on. That night, my penthouse feels less like home and more like command center. Two monitors glow across the dark room, one with the hospital feed, the other running Ray's live surveillance of Ryan's movements abroad. I pour a glass of water, let the cold hit the back of my throat. Every file on my desk is open: financial transfers, storage unit photos, insurance forms. Each document another filter clearing the toxin from her life. Patterns form: numbers, dates, movements, like a constellation whose name I already know. Every cell in the spreadsheet has its wager. Thomas's update pings in. TSA contact ready. Will flag inbound if name matches. I reply, keep it silent. Outside, rain needles the windows again, thin and relentless. By midnight, Ellen's confirmation arrives. Letter delivered to Monaco Hotel front desk. Digital copy queued. Seconds later, Ray messages. He's still in casino. Same woman. The two notifications glow on my phone screen like opposing stars. 3 marked read. 2 still delivered. Control, even in delay. I turn off the lights and let the dark settle. Planning is quieter than grief. It doesn't beg for witnesses. I picture Ryan opening that envelope, reading the bureaucratic jargon, smiling to himself, believing luck is finally aligning. I picture him boarding his flight, rehearsing the story he'll tell about tragic illness and insurance paperwork. He doesn't know that every signature, every timestamp, every step toward that form is a step into jurisdiction I already own. When he lands, Customs will see the alert. Prescott will log the claim. The local authorities will receive an anonymous tip about poisoning linked to a pending insurance file. All threads converge. Neat, traceable, inevitable. I built my empire on patterns like this. Control the data, and you control the story. Some men gamble, others write the rules of the game. Just before dawn, I drive back to the hospital. The road shines slick under streetlights, the city half asleep. In Emily's room, the machines breathe their endless pattern. I stand by her bed, eyes tracing the rise and fall of her chest, steady as accounting columns. Tomorrow, I murmur. Tomorrow, he moves. The ventilator exhales. I match its rhythm, slow and exact. Purpose weighs more than sleep now. Dense, metallic, real. I rest a hand on the blanket. Not tenderness, just confirmation of pulse. Your old man still knows how to hunt, I whisper. Outside, the sky begins to pale, gray leaking into blue. Somewhere across the ocean, a courier places a letter on a polished desk, addressed to Ryan Cooper. And in this silent room, I wait, patient as tide, certain as debt. You ever get that feeling that someone's watching you, even when you think you're alone? That uneasy sense that there's a presence just beyond your perception? I've seen it countless times. And that day was no different. I was watching him, Ryan, walk into that insurance office, completely unaware of what was waiting for him. I had positioned myself across the street, leaning casually against a brick wall, blending with the crowd. People passed me by, lost in their own worlds. They didn't notice me. Hell, they wouldn't have noticed if I'd been standing on their heads. That's the thing. You learn to move, to exist, without being seen. And there I was, watching, taking in every little detail. Every gesture, every hesitation, it all mattered. Ray's voice came through my earpiece. All clear. Position. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I just kept watching. Calm, patient. That's how control works. You wait. You observe. You let the situation unfold until it's perfect. Rushing never helps. The moment always comes to you. Ryan walked in, trying to look confident. You know that look. The one where a man tries so hard to hide that he's terrified, he ends up broadcasting it anyway? Yeah, that one. His hands were slightly stiff. He tapped a pen against the edge of the desk, glanced at the documents, adjusted his tie, just enough to show he cared, but not enough to hide the tension. And I noticed. Oh, I noticed every single little thing. He's tense. Perfect, Ray muttered. There was anticipation in his voice, but I didn't react. I didn't need to. I didn't flinch. I didn't move. I just observed. Patience is part of power. You let the moment unfold. You let people stumble into it themselves. The agent slid a document across. Ryan leaned forward, eyes scanning the fine print. And then, I caught it. The tiny twitch of his hand, the shallow inhale, the faint bead of sweat at his temple. Each micro-expression was a story in itself. Each flicker of movement revealed exactly what he was feeling. And I stored it. Every single detail, cataloged. He glanced toward the window, almost sensing something, but nothing was there. Only me. My reflection ghosted behind him in the glass, faint, unreal. And still, he didn't see me. He couldn't. Not yet. That's the beauty of being unseen. You watch, you wait, and the world continues, oblivious. I shifted slightly, careful not to draw attention. My eyes followed every subtle gesture. Ryan's tapping foot, his fingers brushing over the papers, the way his shoulders tensed when he read a line that didn't sit right. Timing was everything. One wrong movement, one premature reaction, and the whole setup could unravel. But I didn't rush. The trap, it didn't require my interference. It was already working. I just had to let it breathe. Let it move. Let it unfold. Ryan laughed nervously at something the agent said. His foot tapped faster now. His eyes flicked again to the window, almost subconsciously. I could see the slight panic behind the laugh. I could see him trying to maintain control, but control was slipping. Every movement he made was like a note in a song, and I was conducting it silently, invisibly. Do it, Ray's voice said, steady, almost clinical. I didn't need to touch anything. I didn't need to do a thing. The trap was already in motion. Every reaction, every hesitation, every nervous gesture, it was all part of the pattern I had laid out days ago. And I just watched. Calm, patient, untouchable. Time slowed in those moments. The tapping of the pen against the desk, the shuffle of paper, the slight creak of a chair, all magnified in my awareness. Each microsecond mattered. Each tiny sound was a confirmation that the plan was working, that Ryan was walking exactly where I wanted him. I observed the bead of sweat forming at his temple, the shallow inhale, the micro-adjustments of his shirt. Every small tell, every subtle cue, was another piece of the puzzle. And Ryan didn't even know. He didn't know I was there. He didn't know I had been there for the last 10 minutes, tracking, waiting, calculating every possible outcome. All set. He's yours, Ray said. I nodded subtly. Invisible, unseen, untouchable. And then I stepped deeper into the shadow of the street, letting the world carry on around me. Ryan continued, oblivious, fumbling with the pen, adjusting the papers, sweating over words he didn't fully understand. And that's the thing about traps. They don't need force. They work because they are inevitable. They work because the person steps into them willingly, even when they think they're making decisions of their own. The tension stretched, almost unbearable. Ryan leaned back slightly, exhaling, thinking he was done, thinking he was fine. But I had already won. The trap had landed, and there I was, standing across the street, the world moving around me like nothing had happened. Cars honked, people walked by, conversations hummed. Ryan remained completely unaware, vulnerable, exposed. And me? I remained in control, untouchable, invisible to everyone but myself. You ever notice how easy it is to manipulate someone when they don't even know they're being watched? How every twitch, every hesitation, every nervous glance tells you more than words ever could. That's control. That's precision. That day I had both. And Ryan had no idea. It's funny, isn't it? How someone can be right there in front of you, feeling every pulse of fear, every twitch of uncertainty, and still have no clue who's holding the strings. That's the power of patience. That's the power of observation. That day, I walked away satisfied, leaving him with nothing but his own confusion, and leaving myself with the quiet knowledge that the plan had worked perfectly, as it always does when you wait long enough. And that's the thing you learn in my line of work. You wait. You watch. You let people make their own mistakes, step into your design, and then, finally, you strike, or you simply let it land. Because when it does, it lands perfectly. I didn't need to be seen. I didn't need to intervene. I just let it happen. And that's all it ever takes. Ryan left the office a few minutes later, papers in hand, thinking he had survived a simple meeting. Funny thing is, he had no idea how close he'd come. He walked out, glanced around, tried to calm himself, thinking it had been just another day. But the truth is, I was there the whole time, a shadow he couldn't see, a presence he couldn't feel. I followed him quietly, keeping my distance, letting him think he had the street to himself. Every step he took told me more than his words ever could. The way he held his shoulders, tight and tense, the way his eyes darted to reflections in windows. He was starting to sense it, maybe not fully, but enough to make me smile. Not that I smiled often. Smiling is a weakness, and control doesn't allow for weaknesses. Ray's voice buzzed again. He's on the move, maintaining awareness. I adjusted my pace, just enough to keep him in range without being noticed. I could see the little things now, how he avoided eye contact with strangers, how he kept glancing over his shoulder. Panic was setting in, though he didn't yet know the cause. That's what makes it so intoxicating. Watching a man unravel, slowly, naturally, by his own choices. He turned a corner, thinking it was safe. The office fading behind him, his attention shifting to the street. And there I stayed, careful, silent, cataloging every subtle detail. Every hesitation, every quickened breath. I made a mental note of the building entrances, the parked cars, the reflections in every window along the way. It's not enough to trap someone once. You have to know every exit, every line of sight, every possibility. Ryan finally stopped at a cafe, ordering a coffee, still unaware that I was watching him the whole time. He pulled out his phone, scrolling, trying to distract himself from the unease creeping up his spine. That unease, that subtle, prickling awareness that something is off, that's where fear begins. I could see it forming in him, small, almost imperceptible. But I noticed. I always notice. Ray's voice cut in again. He's showing subtle stress indicators. Perfect timing. Timing. That's what it's always about. I didn't move. I didn't intervene. I didn't need to. The trap had landed, and now the follow-through was everything. Every human tells their story without knowing it. Every shift of weight, every tap of a finger, every glance, they all speak. And I had been listening. I followed him slowly, keeping my shadowed presence just outside his awareness. He stopped at a pedestrian crossing, checking traffic. A man brushed past him from behind. Ryan flinched slightly. He thought it was random. It wasn't. Not really. Nothing is ever random when you know what to watch for. He reached the other side of the street and paused, trying to collect himself, trying to ignore the gnawing sense that someone might be watching. I watched the tension grow in him, small lines forming across his forehead, the shallow breaths becoming just a little faster. And still, he didn't see me. Not yet. Every movement he made was predictable, not because he was clumsy or stupid, but because he was human. Humans have tells. They react the same way over and over if you know what to look for. And I did. I knew exactly where he would pause, when he would look back, when he would think he was alone. He walked past a reflective shop window, and for a split second, he saw something. A figure, or maybe just a movement in the glass. He blinked, looked again. Nothing. He shrugged it off, telling himself it was nothing, but the seed of doubt was planted. That seed grows faster than you think. And I let it grow. I let it twist, small and silent, like a tightening rope around his awareness. Ray's voice came again, almost a whisper. He's showing early signs of cognitive overload. Stress indicators increasing. Keep observing. I smiled. Not outwardly, but inside. That's what I do. I take the measure of people. I see them before they see themselves. And right now, Ryan was starting to see nothing, and yet he knew something was off. That tension, the tiny moments of unease, was better than any scream or shout. Better than confrontation. It was art. I followed him to a park bench. He sat, folding the papers carefully, stacking them like he could control something if he arranged them just so. But control was an illusion. He didn't even know he had been controlled already. I stayed in the shadows at a distance, careful, quiet, cataloging every detail. Even the way he shifted his weight from one leg to another told me more than he could imagine. People walked past him, oblivious. Children ran by, dogs barked, bicycles whizzed past. Normalcy. And in that normalcy, he was breaking apart, piece by piece, in silence. I didn't have to move. I didn't have to speak. The effect was already in motion, cascading. The trap had not just landed, it was spreading. Ray whispered once more. Phase 2 is set. Initiate when ready. I nodded subtly, though no one could see it. The world carried on. Ryan still thought he was safe. Still thought he had escaped the reach of whatever had been following him that morning. But the trap was far from over. And I was patient. Patient as the shadows themselves. I didn't need to rush. I never rush. The beauty of this is that timing is everything, and the man who thinks he's in control is always the first to falter. I watched Ryan slowly realize that the small moments, the tapping of the pen, the glances at the reflections, the subtle unease in his own movements, weren't random. That realization came creeping, like the tide, and I let it come. Let it wash over him, invisible, unstoppable. And as he sat there, trying to convince himself everything was fine, I stayed where I was. Silent, patient, untouchable. Waiting for the moment when he would understand that he had been in my control all along. That's power. That's precision. That's patience. By the time he stood, ready to leave the park, a subtle change had settled into him. He didn't know why he felt tense, why the world felt a little off, why every shadow seemed slightly longer than it should be. But I knew. I always know. I trailed him a few steps further, keeping the distance, letting the seed I had planted grow. And as he walked away, unaware of the invisible strings that had guided him, I let the thoughts sink in. The trap isn't just in the act itself, it's in what comes after. The quiet, creeping knowledge that he's already lost. That's when control is absolute. And I walked on, still unseen, still untouchable, letting the city move around me, letting him move through it, and knowing that the next move, his next mistake, would come exactly when I wanted it to. Ryan walked down the street, papers in hand, trying to shake off the unease gnawing at the edge of his mind. He thought he had survived, thought the meeting was over, thought he could go back to normal. But the truth? That meeting was only the beginning. You can't walk away from something you don't even know has already caught you. I kept my distance, just far enough to remain invisible, close enough to watch. Every step he took, every glance around, every slight shift in posture, it all told me more than words ever could. People passed by, oblivious. But he was different now. He was starting to notice little things, subtle signs that his life wasn't quite as predictable as he thought. That's the first stage. That's when control begins to tighten. Ray's voice came softly through my earpiece. He's showing early awareness. Stress indicators rising. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I never do. Observation is its own power. You wait. You watch. You let events unfold in a rhythm only you can see. And right now, Ryan was beginning to feel it. The shadow of inevitability creeping behind him. He paused at a crosswalk, checking traffic. A man brushed past from behind, just a casual encounter, but his reaction was telling. A flinch. A small, almost imperceptible jump in his step. That's the moment you notice. It's never the big events that break someone. It's the small ones. The tiny, unimportant interactions that make the mind start to question itself. Ryan continued, walking toward a small coffee shop. He tried to focus on the mundane. The menu, the barista, the sound of the espresso machine steaming milk. But the unease had grown. The sense that he wasn't alone, that something was off, that someone was watching, it had started to take root. And I let it. Ray whispered again, subtle signs of cognitive stress. Maintain observation. Phase 2 ready. Phase 2. That's where the beauty of patience shows. Phase 1 is the trap itself, the initial act, the landing. Phase 2 is the ripple effect, the quiet pressure that begins to unsettle, to unravel. And Ryan, oblivious though he was, had already stepped into it. I followed him at a careful distance, staying in the shadows. He ordered a coffee, fumbled with his wallet, and sat outside on a bench, stacking papers, tapping a pen absent-mindedly. Each movement, each hesitation, each micro-expression was a signal. He didn't know I was there, but I knew him completely. Every action, every subtle twitch, every nervous glance, it was all part of the story I was writing for him. A man jogged past, brushing against his shoulder. Ryan flinched, startled, as if the day itself was conspiring against him. He looked around quickly, checking the street, scanning the reflections in windows. And for the first time, I could see it. The moment his mind began to suspect, the first conscious awareness that he wasn't entirely in control. Perfect, Ray murmured. He's reacting exactly as predicted. I didn't move. I didn't signal. I didn't interfere. Phase 2 works because it is invisible. You create the circumstances, and then you let human nature do the rest. Stress accumulates. Anxiety spreads. Awareness grows, small but persistent. And the person has no idea who, or what, is guiding it. Ryan took a sip of his coffee and then froze, nearly spilling it. Something in the reflection across the street caught his eye. Not me directly, just a movement, a shadow overlapping with another shadow. He blinked, shook his head, convinced himself it was nothing. But the seed of doubt was planted. That seed grows faster than anyone expects. I let it grow. I watched as he folded his papers, stacked them with careful precision, and glanced at the street again. His heart wasn't racing yet, not overtly, but the subtle signs were there, the tightening jaw, the shallow breaths, the way his fingers drummed nervously against the table. And I cataloged it all. Every micro-reaction, every involuntary gesture. He got up to leave, hesitated for a moment at the doorway, glanced at the sidewalk, glanced at a passing car. Every pause, every look, every tiny movement told me exactly where his mind was, exactly what he was thinking, and exactly how far the ripple of the trap had reached. I followed, careful to remain unseen, blending into the world around him. Pedestrians passed, oblivious. The city moved on. But for Ryan, the day had shifted. Subtle, almost imperceptible, yet undeniable. He couldn't put his finger on it, but he felt the presence of something, someone, just out of reach. That awareness, creeping, uncertain, was enough to begin breaking him down. Phase 2 is unfolding as expected, Ray said. Maintain distance, continue observation. I kept my distance. I never need to be close. Control isn't about proximity. It's about knowing what will happen before it does. I could see him tighten his grip on the papers. Notice how his eyes darted to reflections in shop windows, to shadows along the sidewalk. Panic wasn't here yet, but anticipation was. And anticipation is a form of panic, just slower, more refined. He paused at a street corner, glanced over his shoulder, and for the first time really looked. Not me directly, but the idea that something was following, watching. He frowned, hesitated, and kept walking. The tension in him had grown, imperceptible to anyone else, but crystal clear to me. He was beginning to feel the pressure of the trap without knowing why. And that's the beauty of it. Every step he took, every glance over his shoulder, every small shift in his posture, everything was part of the plan. I didn't have to intervene. The trap had taken on a life of its own. All I had to do was observe. By the time he reached a quieter street, the tension in his body was evident. Shoulders stiff, jaw tight, hands slightly shaking as he adjusted the papers in his grip. His eyes flicked to shadows, then reflections, then back to the street ahead. He didn't know what he was reacting to, but he knew he was reacting. And that awareness, creeping slowly, is the point where a man begins to unravel. I followed at a careful distance, invisible, untouchable, cataloging it all. Every moment, every beat, every micro-expression. He had walked into the trap. Phase 1 had landed. Phase 2, the subtle, creeping pressure, was unfolding perfectly. And soon the consequences would become unavoidable. I didn't move closer. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The man was beginning to feel it in ways he couldn't explain. And I let it grow. Patience is power. Observation is control. And I had both in abundance. By the time Ryan realized the day wasn't quite right, that something had shifted subtly but irreversibly, I was already planning the next step. He thought he was in control, thought he had survived the meeting. But the truth? He had already lost. And as I walked in the shadows, letting him move through the world, unaware, I knew the next moments, the next mistake, the next crack in his composure, would come exactly when I wanted them to. And when they did, there would be no escaping what I had already set in motion. Ryan didn't know it yet, but the day had already taken control of him. Every step, every glance, every instinct had been guided long before he walked out of that office. And now, it was closing in. You could see it in him, subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but growing with every heartbeat. Panic isn't loud at first. It whispers. It lingers in your chest. It creeps along your spine. And he was feeling it, even if he didn't know why. I followed him, always careful, always just far enough to remain unseen. Every movement he made confirmed what I already knew. Humans are predictable in ways they'll never admit. They try to hide it, mask it, distract themselves, but it's all written on them. Every micro-expression, every twitch, every hesitation, it's all there. And I had read him completely. He paused at a street corner, scanning the traffic, scanning the people around him. The unease had grown. He was starting to notice something. though he didn't know what. Shadows felt heavier. Reflections felt wrong. The world, once familiar, now seemed subtly hostile. That's the point where fear begins. Not the big moments, the small ones. The subtle hints that you are not alone, that you are not in control. And he was exactly there. Ray's voice buzzed quietly, indicators rising sharply. He's aware of the manipulation. Psychological pressure increasing. Maintain observation. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. This wasn't about me speaking. It was about him realizing, slowly, that the world had shifted and he had no idea how it had happened. The trap didn't need force, it needed perception. And now, perception was breaking him down piece by piece. He reached a quiet alley, thinking he could finally have a moment to himself. He checked his surroundings again, more carefully this time. His hand trembled slightly as he adjusted the papers in his grip. He glanced at his reflection in a darkened window and paused. That pause was everything. That pause told me he had begun to see the invisible threads. He didn't understand them yet. He didn't know who was behind them, but he sensed them. And that's when Phase 3 began, the moment where awareness collides with inevitability. I didn't need to be close. I didn't need to act. The situation had been carefully orchestrated to this exact point. Every step, every decision he had made, every gesture and micro-expression had led here. Ryan's breathing quickened, not enough to be obvious to anyone else, but I noticed it. The tension in his shoulders, the tightening of his jaw, the subtle shifting of weight from one foot to the other, they all spoke the same language. Fear, anticipation, helplessness. He stopped mid-step and looked around again. Shadows, reflections, movements that might have been nothing, but weren't. He felt the pressure, though he didn't understand it. The trap wasn't a physical cage. It was psychological, invisible, suffocating. And it was perfect. Ray whispered again. He's reaching cognitive overload. Prepare for final phase. I exhaled slowly. Final phase. That's where it all comes together. The moment the trap isn't just landing, it's claiming the person. Phase 1 is the setup. Phase 2 is the pressure. Phase 3 is the reckoning. Ryan took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He looked around, realizing that something was wrong, that something had been wrong for hours. And for the first time, fear was real. Not subtle, not creeping. Real, tangible, almost physical. That's when the cracks appear. That's when control slips. That's when a man realizes how little control he actually has. I stayed back, letting him move, letting him process. There's no need to rush someone when they are unraveling under their own awareness. Let them take the journey themselves. The panic doesn't need to be forced. It blooms naturally when you've laid the groundwork. Ryan paused in the alley, his eyes darting to every shadow, every reflection, every movement that might signal another presence. His mind was racing now, catching up with the unease he had been feeling all day. He had no idea who, or what, had orchestrated this, but he knew he was caught. And in that realization, the trap became undeniable. Ray's voice came quietly, almost reverently. He's realizing it. The endgame is here. Watch carefully. I stepped back even further, unseen, untouchable. The beauty of this was in the subtlety, in the invisible strings, in the way the trap made him complicit in his own downfall. He moved, made choices, tried to escape the feeling of being trapped, but every decision, every action, only confirmed it further. The alley felt smaller now, though it hadn't changed. Shadows loomed longer. Reflections repeated themselves in impossible ways. Every sound felt amplified. Ryan was hyper-aware, every nerve firing, every micro-expression betraying the terror he tried to hide. And I watched it all. Calm, patient, in control. He stopped completely and looked around, realizing with a jolt that he was not alone. Not physically, but psychologically. He understood the pattern, the invisible hand, the precision of the plan. But understanding came too late. The trap had already claimed him. And that's the key. The trap doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to strike. It works because the person steps into it willingly, because every choice they think they are making freely is already predicted, already anticipated. And Ryan had stepped into it from the very beginning. He sank against the wall of the alley, breathing heavily, trying to make sense of the day, of the feeling, of the invisible pressure closing in from all directions. Every reflection, every shadow, every small detail he had ignored now became a signal, a warning, a confirmation. And still, he didn't know who was orchestrating it. He only knew the effect. Phase 3 had done its work. He was aware. He was panicked. He was caught. And I had done nothing but watch. Nothing but wait. Nothing but be patient. Control doesn't demand action. It demands precision. And today, precision had claimed him. By the time he looked up, scanning the alley again, he realized fully. The unease, the tension, the invisible strings. He could feel them, undeniable now. He didn't know the scope. He didn't know the hand behind it. But he felt the consequences. And that is the moment when power is absolute. I remained in the shadows, unseen, untouchable. He thought he could escape. He thought he had options. But the truth? The trap had been built around him from the very first step. And now, the culmination was complete. The day, the meeting, the reflections, the shadows, they had all led here. And as he finally understood, as the panic and awareness met reality, I allowed myself the faintest recognition of the work completed. Not for anyone else. Not for applause. Not even for satisfaction that could be spoken. Simply acknowledgement. The trap had worked perfectly. Phase 3 was complete. The man was mine, in a sense, though he didn't know it. And I remained exactly where I had been all day. In control, patient, untouchable. And that's the way it always is. You don't need to strike. You don't need to confront. You only need to observe, wait, and let human nature unfold the outcome for you. And today it had. By the time Ryan finally stopped moving, the city had carried on around him, completely indifferent. Cars honked, footsteps echoed, conversations floated through the air, but he was trapped in a different world. A world I had created without ever being seen. And now, finally, he understood it. He leaned against a wall, head slightly bowed, fingers gripping the papers he had carried since the morning. The tension in his body was unmistakable, no longer subtle. The awareness had fully sunk in. Every shadow, every reflection, every flicker of movement he had ignored all day, they were all connected. He had been caught from the moment he stepped into that office. And he had walked into it willingly, without knowing it. Ray's voice came faintly in my earpiece. Final phase complete. Observation indicates full cognitive acknowledgement. He understands. Without question, that control was never his. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. The work had been done. The trap had executed itself perfectly, using his own decisions, his own instincts, against him. The beauty of it was that he thought he had a choice, that he had a moment to act freely. But freedom is an illusion, especially when every move you make has already been anticipated. Ryan's breathing was heavier now. His eyes darted across the alley, past the street, back at the reflections, trying to find a clue, a hint, a mistake he could exploit. But there wasn't one. Every possibility had already been accounted for. Every exit, every reflection, every shadow had been a part of the plan. And now he knew it. The realization hit him like a physical blow. It's a strange thing, watching someone understand too late. Watching them realize that they have been manipulated, controlled, predicted, and yet were powerless to stop it. It's not cruelty, it's precision. And the satisfaction doesn't come from witnessing fear. It comes from witnessing inevitability. Ryan sank to the ground finally, letting the weight of the day press down on him. He ran scenarios through his mind, trying to understand what had happened, how it had happened, when it had started. But the pattern was complete. He had already been guided at every turn, nudged imperceptibly toward every step, and he couldn't undo it. He could only sit there, finally aware of the invisible web, too late to escape it. I stepped into a deeper shadow across the street, still unseen, untouchable, cataloging every detail. The city moved on around me. Ryan sat in the alley, papers clutched loosely, eyes scanning the walls, the ground, the reflections, searching for the hand that had guided him. And all he could find were ghosts, shadows, the consequences of his own choices. Ray's voice came quietly again. Observation confirms full psychological compliance. Target remains unaware of the observer, but aware of influence. Outcome achieved. I exhaled slowly. That's all I ever need to do. I don't need confrontation. I don't need chaos. I don't need noise. The trap works silently, invisibly, perfectly. And today it had. Ryan finally rose from the ground, moving slowly, cautiously, almost mechanically. Each step he took was measured, deliberate, and yet uncertain. The subtle awareness that something had always been controlling him lingered, coloring every motion. Every glance, every breath, every hesitation reminded him of the invisible hand that had orchestrated the entire day. And still, he didn't know me. He didn't know that I had been watching, guiding, predicting every single choice. The perfection of the trap isn't in the fear, isn't in the panic. It's in the unseen, in the knowledge that someone else has always been one step ahead, and you'll never know who. He finally reached a street corner, hesitated, and looked back over his shoulder. He tried to convince himself he was fine, that he had survived, that he could continue as if nothing had happened. But it was too late. The tension had settled into him like a permanent mark. The trap had done more than catch him. It had changed him. It had made him aware of control in a way that would follow him long after today. I watched, silent, patient. This was the final act. There was nothing left to do. The trap had unfolded exactly as planned. Ryan was left with the consequences, subtle, lingering, undeniable, and I remained where I had been all day, in control, untouchable, unseen. There's a lesson in moments like these. Control is not about force. It's not about confrontation. It's about understanding, patience, and precision. And when you master it, the outcomes are inevitable. You don't need to strike. You don't need to shout. You don't even need to be seen. The trap will do the work for you. If it's set properly, if timing is respected, if human nature is anticipated. Ryan walked away from the alley finally, slower than before, aware now of the invisible pressure that had guided him all day. He felt it in every step, every breath, every glance at a shadow or reflection. And he would carry that awareness with him, unsure of its origin, unable to identify its source. That's the power of patience. That's the power of precision. And I walked away, blending into the crowd, unnoticed, untouchable. The city moved on, indifferent, unaware of what had happened in a quiet alley just moments ago. Ryan had survived the day, but the day had not survived him. The trap had done its work, perfectly, invisibly, silently. I don't take satisfaction in the obvious. I don't need applause. I don't even need recognition. The beauty of this is in its quiet perfection, in the unseen control, the calculated timing, the subtle pressure that changes everything without anyone realizing it. That's the kind of power I work with. That's the kind of day I orchestrate. And today, the work was done. The trap had landed. The consequences had been set. The observer remained unseen, untouchable. The man, aware now of the strings he couldn't see, carried forward the weight of the day without ever knowing exactly why. And that is control. That is patience. That is power.